What's up, y'all? You're watching Union Minded. I'm your host, Eric, and today we are going to talk about how the Trump administration has gone on the offensive against labor. We're going to go back in time and we're going to look at different steps that it has taken to show where its stance is when it comes to working folks, when it comes to unions more specifically. Again, we're seeing things happening at a very breakneck pace. That's on purpose. It's meant to overwhelm. But when you take a look at the actions that folks do, it shows you who they are. So don't tell me who you are. Show me who you are by the actions you take. And the Trump administration is no friend to working folks anywhere. So on January 27th, an article was published, and the headline was, "Judge Rules Against Federal PLA Mandate." A U.S. federal claims judge has ruled in favor of a group of construction companies that filed protests against the implementation of former President Joe Biden's December 2023 executive order that mandated project labor agreements on federal contracts over $35 million. In a briefing earlier this month, Judge Ryan Holte of the U.S. Court of Federal Claims said the implementation of the mandate on 7 contract procedures last year ignored federal agencies' own research indicating PLAs would be anti-competitive and relied on arbitrary and capricious presidential policy. The January 21 ruling only impacts those specific bid protests filed in 2024, but construction employer groups touted it as a win for the entire industry. It opens the door for more challenges and puts the future of the rule in question, said Dirk Hare, Washington, D.C. based partner at Philadelphia headquartered law firm Fox Rothschild, which represented some of the plaintiffs. Now, this is the first move that would be anti-union. Project labor agreements basically is a structured agreement on how a government contract is going to be bid, what's the process, what's allowed and what's not. And they favor unions. And going against the project labor agreement right away is an act against unions. It lowers wages. It creates less safe jobs because union jobs are safer, they pay better, and they get done on time. And so this is an anti-labor ruling. And that's in January 27th, just 7 days after the inauguration. But then you move forward a little bit. And you look February 12th, the Department of Defense halts PLAs on construction projects. The AGC lauded the Defense Department's move to stop the use of project labor agreements and said it anticipates other agencies will follow suit. Again, kicking unions out of the job. This is going to affect projects that are being bid, projects that are already started. This is going to affect a lot of union jobs. The Department of Defense has ordered its contracting officers to halt the use of project labor agreements on large-scale construction projects, according to a memo obtained by Construction Dive. The notice, dated February 7th, says contracting officers shall remove PLA requirements created by former President Joe Biden that apply to projects receiving $35 million or more in federal funds. As part of the memo signed by John M. Tenaglia, Principal Director of Defense Pricing, Contracting and Acquisition Policy for the Department of Defense, contracting officers were ordered to amend solicitations for federal contracts to remove PLA requirements. Again, this is more proof that they're moving against unions. So if you think that you're in a union and this administration is representing you and they're going to do better for you, you are mistaken. And that's 2 articles just a little under a month apart, just showing step by step how they're coming towards us. And then I want to drop one that came out on Friday, how Trump's firings paralyzed the NLRB. Again, the NLRB is the police for labor. It's the organization that enforces labor laws. It makes the bosses have to do the right thing. Don't forget, they're coming after OSHA as well. They're coming after OSHA as well. They're going after the Department of Education. But we're focusing on labor, just labor right now. And this is how the firings have paralyzed the NLRB. This is out of Mother Jones. President Donald Trump has plunged the National Labor Relations Board, an independent federal government agency that enforces law on collective bargaining and unfair labor practices, into chaos, risking the enforcement of workers' rights across the country. On the 28th of January, Trump fired General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, soon after he pushed out Democratic board member Gwen Wilcox. While Abruzzo's firing was not a surprise, the dismissal of Wilcox was far outside the norm. A president had never removed a board member prior to the end of their term. Wilcox has since filed a lawsuit against Trump, arguing that her termination violated the NLRA of 1935, which states that board members can only be removed upon notice and hearing for neglect of duty or malfeasance in office, but for no other cause. In early February, the purge continued. Trump fired acting general counsel Jessica Rutter, who had just replaced Abruzzo, and appointed William Cohen, a conservative who briefly served as a board member under George Bush. He then dismissed Susan Sui Grunman, the chair of the Federal Labor Relations Authority, an independent federal agency that oversees labor relations between federal government and its employees. Notice that they're just coming after anyone who actually looks out for workers in a labor capacity. Margaret Poydock, a senior policy analyst at the Economic Policy Institute, a nonprofit think tank, told me that the NLRB firings not only essentially paralyze the agency from making decisions, but also destroy its independence. The NLRB maintains independence because its board members, their terms are 5 years. This is intentional and allows members to serve between administrations, thus shielding them from presidential interference. Poydock points to the letter firing Abruzzo and Wilcox as a glimpse at what is to come. Such language furthers concern that Trump wants the NLRB to take a pro-business stance. So let's read what they wrote in the letter. Trent Morris, the deputy director of the Office of Presidential Personnel, wrote on Trump's behalf that he did not think the pair could fairly evaluate matters before them without duly disfavoring the interests of the employers. So it's saying we don't think you can rule in favor without hurting the interests of the employer. We think you're not going to really care about the interests of the employer. Again, the NLRB is the labor police. They're supposed to care about the interests of the worker, not the employer. In September 2019, the NLRB lowered the standard for employers to demonstrate that they follow collective bargaining agreements when making unilateral changes to employment policies like safety and disciplinary action, thus decreasing the grounds for employees to file unfair labor practice charges. There are legal battles going on where they're suing to try to get the NLRB disbanded, claiming that it's unconstitutional. This is Amazon. These are these guys that are coming for it. And it's just, you can see over and over again, you can see the attack on working folks. The attack on working folks. And it's just coming at a breakneck pace. And if we're not careful, and if we're not smart, and if we're not active, and if we're not ready to fight back, we're going to lose everything. Everything that people already fought, bled, and died for. These are harrowing times. They are. I ain't gonna front. When you have a grasp on what is really going on, it's pretty terrifying. But I got faith in working people. I know where the power lies, and I know when push comes to shove, we're gonna fight back. And so, y'all keep in mind, man, the fight's not left and right, it's up and down, and it's gonna take solidarity to win always. Each one teach one, get out there and reach one, and remember, there could be no union without you and I front and center. So let's go.